Kia ora, Alex.
Tēnā koe.
Can we start by you telling me a bit about yourself?
Sure. Tēnā koe tō pātai mai. Ko Alex Barnes ahau, no tauranga moana. I te puake au I reira, he pākapaka tēnei no rangataua. I puta tēnei ihu I te kōhanga reo me te kura kaupapa. No reira e mihi tonu au ki tauranga moana iwi, Ngāti Pūkenga, Ngāti Ranginui, ngā Pōtiki hapu. Nā rātau I whakatō I tēnei o ngā kākono I roto I ahau, hoi anō I roto I taku whānau. My name's Alex Barnes. I'm originally from Tauranga Moana and I'm a graduate of Kōhanga Reo and Kura Kaupapa Māori, and I'm thankful for those experiences and want to just acknowledge Tauranga Moana iwi, Ngāti Pūkenga, Ngāti Ranginui and ngā Pōtiki hapu for encouraging my whānau participation, family participation in Kura Kaupapa Kōhanga Reo movements in the moana.
In the research work, you use the term Pākehā paralysis. Tell me what you mean by that, and have you experienced that yourself?
Sure. Pākehā paralysis is a term that came into academic use probably about 10 years ago, and it really is about non-Māori Pākehā people feeling as though they don't know how to work with Māori. They may want to work with Māori, but they're not sure about how to do that, and therefore there's a sense of anxiety, there's a sense of paralysis, a sense of not being able to move, and that really counters any potential transformation that can happen in terms of Māori Pākehā relations. So Pākehā paralysis is something that I think a lot of non-Māori and Pākehā feel, particularly in education, and focusing on Pākehā paralysis really puts that issue right in the centre of this research work. And the aim is to counter it. The aim is to find new ways of countering the paralysis, finding practical suggestions that these Pākehā I've interviewed who've been involved with kaupapa Māori research for over 30 years have found helpful. And they talk about the things that have created more paralysis. Yes, I've experienced paralysis. I know that feeling very well. It doesn't necessarily go away, but I think that it can be a good thing and a bad thing. And I say it can be a good thing in that it keeps me on my toes. It helps me not be complacent. I guess where it gets in the way is when I become unsure of whether to say something or not, and I might actually have some good things to say, or I might have some good suggestions, or I might be able to put people in contact, and the paralysis might get in the way of that. So yeah, I experience that, particularly when I'm in Māori spaces where the use of te reo Māori and tikanga are at play, and it's quite a formal setting. If I'm at the marae with my wife and our whānau, it's a bit different, but if I'm in the research field and the whānau community, the iwi, the hapu don't know who I am, that's when paralysis can come up. But I've found strategies of dealing with that. And again, it can be a helpful reminder to not be complacent too.
What were some of the other key ideas and themes that came through in your discussions?
Well, one of the key questions was actually asking that question: how did you get involved in this space, in this discipline, in this area? How did you get involved as non-Māori? And what I found was personal experiences from a very young age had a huge impact on these people. So personal experiences at school with Māori, finding out that some of them had Māori connections that they didn't realise they had through marriage, having kids with Māori, having their kids go through the non-Māori system and seeing how difficult it was for them to succeed in who they were. So personal experiences were really an important part, and then that kind of made them start to think, geez, the reality that lots of New Zealanders as Pākehā see and experience isn't necessarily the reality that Māori experience and see, and they became interested in changing that reality. So that was one of the things, those early personal formative experiences. So the other theme as well was looking at knowing yourself. That was the other theme, knowing who you are, where you've come from and what you can contribute. Not trying to be someone you're not, but knowing that you're involved in this work as a result of an invitation or as a result of the relationship that you've developed, and you offer things. So many of the participants talked about that. Many of the participants talked about being in the relationship and having something to offer, but also being careful not to overstep the mark. And this is where the idea of keeping it real, of being reflexive about practice, understanding that as non-Māori, we will be perceived differently by Māori, and will be perceived differently by non-Māori working with Māori. So there are lots of things that non-Māori have to think about. The other thing is that this creates a complex situation. So it's never straightforward being non-Māori working in this area, and you can't just dabble in it. You have to really think about what the implications are ethically, politically, culturally. And also recognising what the benefits are, the benefits that we gain from being in this work. I get huge satisfaction from working with Māori. It's exciting, it's creative. Kaupapa Māori as an evolving field is amazing. It's a place of huge learning and huge transformation, and there's a huge amount of potential in this space. And so I feel humbled and privileged to be part of that, and I know that the participants felt that too. The other thing that was interesting were some of the participants who were teaching in academic settings, teaching students. They saw that when they were working with the Māori students generally would go back and contribute to their local communities. And they saw the impact of their work with the Māori communities in very broad terms. So Māori would go back, would contribute, had a sense of obligation and responsibility, whereas the non-Māori students generally just saw their degree as a degree and wouldn't necessarily have that obligation. So they felt as though they were contributing something not just to the individual but to a wider collective, which was interesting to hear.
What about the issue of language? Pākehā researchers using Te Reo Māori.
Yes, it has been an issue for all those involved in the research. They said that knowledge was really important of Te Reo Māori. It was integral to their working with Māori communities. Interestingly, some of them had varying degrees of fluency. Some were better speakers than others. Part of the issue around use of Te Reo in the research work again comes back to relationships. So the local relationships you hold with the whānau, the iwi, the hapu, the Māori community you're working with. If they know who you are and they have trust in who you are, the use of Te Reo Māori seems to be not a big issue. But if you're new to the community, you're developing the relationship and you have some Reo Māori, it appears that, well, this research suggests that you need to be careful with the use of Te Reo Māori. Currently there's a bit of a debate, very in simple terms, a debate between one group who sees non-Māori learning and encourages non-Māori learning the reo as an important part of the Māori language revitalisation process. So if you're in that camp, use Te Reo Māori. Another camp see a risk of non-Māori learning Māori language and tikanga, in that they can then use the language to further colonise or to take up space that should be for Māori. And I can see both points. And again, it comes back to the relationship that has been developed between the researcher and the community you're working with. And so as non-Māori, we have to constantly think about, is this the right place to use the reo or not? And it comes down really to the local relationships and the trust that's been formed between the people.
I know you're carrying on with this research, but how do you see the space evolving in terms of the research that you've done to date? Do you think there is going to be an ongoing place for Pākehā researchers to be working in the kaupapa Māori space?
I'm hesitant to say that there will never be a guaranteed place for Pākehā and kaupapa Māori research, because kaupapa Māori as an idea, as a set of ideas, really needs to be controlled and determined by Māori. And it's really, again, comes back to the relationship that is formed between Māori and non-Māori and how that relationship transpires and changes and adapts over time. So when the relationship is good and there's an invitation, then I do see a role for Pākehā in this work. And that's not a static relationship, it'll continue to change, and there'll be debates and discussion about that role, and we need to continue doing that. And that's what this research is partly about, is building some new knowledge about how that process happens, how those relationships take place, and what Māori also think are the possibilities and limits of non-Māori engagement and involvement. So with this push for Māori achieving success as Māori, this research contributes to non-Māori their knowledge about how to do that in practice. So there's a philosophical, ethical discussion going on about the ethics of non-Māori participation, but then there's very real practical suggestions in this work about how non-Māori can contribute to that policy goal. And that policy goal is not just restricted to teachers, but also to those in the community as well, and really we need people in both inside and outside the system to look at ways of non-Māori contributing to Māori success and well-being.
In the report, Alex, you use the phrase keeping it real. What do you mean by that?
Well, keeping it real is just that. It's keeping it real in terms of the relationships you have, the integrity you bring to those relationships, who you are as a person. I've never wanted to be Māori. I'm proud of my non-Māori heritage. I'm proud of my English, French and Irish heritage. I'm a third generation Pākehā New Zealander, and I understand that to be that in New Zealand is about being clear on who I am and whose land I stand on. And I don't need to be Māori. So keeping it real is about owning what I am and what I'm not. And I think my experience and the experience of those I interviewed demonstrate that by being clear about who you are and not trying to be something else, people respect that. And I think that's a general theme, that if you have authenticity, you have integrity, you have humility, people respect that. These are things that we continue to learn. These are just ongoing life learnings, but we can use them in the research field in terms of working productively with diverse communities, because without that, with a neutral, discompassionate position, I don't think that relationships can flourish or develop. And for this type of work, relationships are key. So keeping it real is just about being who you are, being open to learn, and being reflexive, thinking about how I'm involved in this relationship and what I can bring, and what I need to be quiet about.
Thank you.
Kia ora.